There are moments when silence speaks louder than love, and sometimes forgiveness begins not with words, but with the sound of fire crackling in a kitchen. Hello everyone, this is Life Single Review. Today we return to the world of Huyen and Dae, a couple who once built a life together, and then tore it apart. Look closely at their smiles in the new kitchen, the way their hands move in quiet rhythm. Do you see peace? Or do you see the ghosts of old pain? What if the warmth of that stove hides the ashes of a heartbreak too deep to name? What if this new beginning is not just about a kitchen, but about two souls daring to rebuild after years of silence, regret, and things left unsaid? Let's light that fire and see what still burns. Once, before all the silence and storms, Huyen and Dae were the kind of couple people envied. They had nothing, no land, no savings, only a small wooden house, a rusty stove, and a belief that love was enough to survive the world. Each dawn, she boiled sweet potatoes for breakfast. Each night, he came home smelling of earth and rain. Their laughter used to fill the tiny kitchen, echoing off the cracked walls like sunlight breaking through mist. But love, when mixed with exhaustion, can turn sour. It began with long hours, unpaid debts, and the weight of pride. Dae wanted to prove himself, that he could build more than fences and firewood. And Huyen, gentle but proud, refused to ask for help even when her hands ached and her heart trembled. They stopped talking about dreams. They started talking about bills. Then came the rumor. A man from the market, a kind face, a passing smile, nothing more. But gossip in a small town is like smoke. It crawls under every door. Someone whispered to Dae that his wife was no longer the same woman who once waited for him in the rain. He didn't ask. He didn't need proof. He only needed to believe the worst to protect his pride. That night, the storm outside matched the storm inside. Words turned into shouts. Her tears hit the floor faster than the rain against the roof. And in the middle of it all, the fire in the stove died out. A small, quiet surrender. She left before sunrise, clutching only a few clothes and a photograph. The road was muddy, the sky bruised with clouds, and every step she took away from home felt like walking barefoot on broken glass. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Dae woke to a silence so deep it hummed. The house smelled of ashes and regret. For days he sat by the empty stove, waiting for the sound of her footsteps, the soft hum she used to make while cooking. It never came. He told himself she was gone for good, and he deserved it. Years passed. He built fences for other people's homes, repaired their roofs, watched their fires burn warm and steady, while his own heart stayed cold. Every New Year, he drank a little too much and stood outside under the stars, wondering if somewhere, someone was still boiling sweet potatoes at dawn. Huyen lived far away then, in a small rented room near a factory. Her hands became rough, her back bent from lifting crates. But she never complained. Every payday, she bought a single incense stick, just for her, and prayed, "Let him be healthy. Let him be less angry. Let us both live in peace." It was the kind of love that no longer wanted to be loved back, just to wish well from afar. Then one morning, after many gray years, Dae heard that Huyen had collapsed at work. He didn't think. He just went. He found her sitting outside the clinic, pale but alive, a scarf wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up, and for the first time in years, their eyes met. Not as lovers, not as enemies, but as two people who had finally survived their pride. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry," but his throat closed. All he managed was, "You shouldn't walk home alone." She didn't answer, just looked down at her hands, the same hands that once built a home with him, and whispered, I'm used to it. After that day, Day started leaving things by her door. Bags of rice, vegetables, a small jar of honey. No note, no name. He thought she wouldn't know. But of course, she did. Forgiveness doesn't always arrive with words. Sometimes it comes quietly, wrapped in small acts of care. Then, one spring, Huyen returned to the old house. The roof had caved in, the fence had fallen, and the stove, their first stove, was nothing but a hole in the ground. She could have left it there, let time finish what anger had started. But she didn't. She began to rebuild. And that's when Dee came back. Not with flowers, not with apologies. He just stood there, holding a plank of wood and a shy smile. "Let's fix it," he said. She didn't reply, only nodded and handed him a hammer. In that moment, something ancient and tender awoke between them. Not the fire of youth, but the slow, steady warmth of two people who had finally learned what it meant to lose and still choose to stay. They worked side by side for days. No one spoke of the past, but every time she looked up and saw him silently shaping the bricks, the corners of her mouth trembled. Every time he saw her sweep the dust with those same tired hands, he remembered why he had fallen in love in the first place. When the new stove was finished, they didn't light it right away. They just stood there, listening to the wind rustle through the old trees, as if waiting for the right moment. And when she finally struck the match, the flame caught quickly, burning clean and bright. He looked at her, eyes glimmering in the firelight, and for the first time in years, said her name softly, "Huyen." She didn't cry. She just smiled, a small fragile smile that said, "We are home again." That's the theory developed by Life Single Review, a story of love lost, pride broken, and the quiet miracle of finding your way back. Now, let's return to the original narrative, where the fire burns not only for cooking, but for forgiveness. When we see them again in the main story, everything looks peaceful, almost too peaceful. The morning sun spills through the garden, painting their faces in gold. Day laughs as Maya runs with Bibi, and Huyen, calm, steady, almost radiant, pretends nothing ever broke inside her. But if you listen carefully, you can still hear the echo of what once was. The way she says, "Run slowly, Maya, don't step on Bibi's feet," sounds like a mother teaching gentleness after living through too much harshness. And when Day adjusts her hat, or passes her the ladle without a word, that's not routine, that's atonement. That's a man still saying sorry with his hands. They're small talks about planting morning glory, about selling vegetables to the restaurant lady. They aren't just chores. They're vows disguised as daily life. Each seed they plant is a promise. We're still trying. The noodles steaming on the table, the laughter between bites. Those aren't signs of simplicity. They're symbols of endurance. People think peace is easy. It's not. Peace is built, spoon by spoon, after war has ended inside two hearts. Watch how Day looks at Maya before taking her to school. There's pride in his eyes, yes, but also guilt. Maybe he wonders what his daughter remembers. Maybe he hopes she'll never see the same silence that once froze their home. And Huyen, she doesn't speak much, but her gaze lingers every time Dee leaves for work. It's a quiet fear that forgiveness might vanish again, that peace could crumble if the wind blows wrong. So she keeps herself busy, planting, cooking, sweeping, holding everything together with tenderness, because she knows how easily love can fall apart. Yet, despite all that, something beautiful breathes between them. When he returns from work, muddy and tired, she doesn't ask where he's been. She just says, "Wash your hands. Breakfast is ready." And that, to her, is love. Not grand gestures, not poetic words, but small mercies repeated every single day. There's a scene where Maya hugs her before school. The camera lingers there. You can almost see the tears Huyen hides behind her smile. Because to her, that embrace means more than forgiveness. It means she has rebuilt a home from ashes. Sometimes love after pain doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like two people standing side by side, stirring soup, planting seeds, and pretending not to notice that they're finally at peace. When the day turns gray and the rain begins to fall, Huyen lights the first fire in the new stove. The sound of crackling wood fills the air, soft and nervous, like a heartbeat learning to trust again. Day sits beside her, cutting vegetables, pretending not to notice the way her hands tremble just slightly. But he sees it. He always has. "Be careful," he says, his voice gentle. "I know," she replies. "This time, I'll make it right." And those words, "this time," they carry the weight of years. The camera moves slowly across the room. The fire glows. The rain whispers on the roof. The incense curls upward like a bridge between the past and what's left of their faith. They prepare the sweet porridge together. Cassava, sweet potatoes, and peanuts. A poor man's meal, but rich with meaning. When she finally bows before the altar, her voice shakes. "Please bless this kitchen with warmth and love. May peace live here again." At that moment, you can feel the story folding in on itself, the way past and present finally meet. It's not about the offering anymore. It's about the reconciliation hidden inside it. Every scoop of sugar, every grain of rice becomes a confession. Day stands behind her, silent. His eyes glisten as the incense smoke rises. He doesn't pray aloud. Perhaps he doesn't know how. But in that silence, you can almost hear him say, "Forgive me. Not for what I did, but for how long it took me to come back." Outside, the wind howls and the rain strikes the windows. Yet inside, the room glows with orange warmth. The contrast feels deliberate, as if the world is testing their peace, seeing if this fire can survive the storm. When the ritual ends, Huyen smiles, a small, tired but real smile. They sit down to eat the porridge, their first meal together in the new kitchen. Day tastes it, nods quietly, and whispers, "It's good." She answers, "It's sweet." And maybe she's not talking about the food. They don't hold hands. They don't embrace. But you can feel it. Something long dead has started breathing again. Not the passion of youth, but the calm, steady warmth of two people who finally understand what love costs and why it's still worth paying. That night, the fire doesn't go out. It burns low, soft, constant. Promise. Some stories don't end with words. They fade into silence, into the soft crackle of fire that keeps burning long after everyone has gone to sleep. For Huyen and Day, the new kitchen isn't just a place to cook. It's a quiet monument to everything they survived: pride, loneliness, and the cruel way time teaches love its limits. They didn't rebuild their marriage with grand confessions or tears. They rebuilt it with patience, one meal, one seed, one breath at a time. And that's what makes it beautiful. Because forgiveness, in its purest form, isn't dramatic. It's humble. It's slow. It's a woman lighting incense in the rain, whispering a prayer no one hears but the one who broke her heart. It's a man sitting beside her, saying nothing, but staying. If you've ever loved, lost, and dared to begin again, may this story remind you, even after the fire dies, the warmth can still remain. Thank you for watching Life Single Review. If this story touched you, Share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Because love, no matter how old, still deserves to be reborn.